I just want to tell you that I love the Beatles. They have great music and great talent. I have all their albums and I have t-shirts and items. I even enjoy the old cartoon of the Beatles that was made in the 60s, but it wasn't long until I found out there was a morbid secret to the cartoon. I was at a collector's shop where they had a section about the Beatles, and I was looking for some mugs and pins to add to, well, my collection. I bought 2 Beatles mugs and 4 Beatles pins, and I was about to leave the section until something caught my eye. It was a videotape called The Beatles Cartoon, The Lost Episode. I really wanted to get it, so I told my mom, and she said, "Great, I'll buy it for you." When I went to tell the counter worker that I'd like to buy the tape, he said I wasn't allowed to have it. He told me that he watched it and he had nightmares. I was surprised that he said that about the tape because it was the Beatles. How can a cartoon about the Beatles be scary? But he said, "Never mind, you're just going to have nightmares anyway." And he gave me the tape. While I was walking away, I saw him folding his hands like he's praying. I was starting to feel like there's something wrong with the tape, or maybe something just wrong with him. When I got home, I immediately went downstairs to watch the mysterious video. When the video went on, something weird happened right at the beginning. It was the sound of screams, somebody in agony. I was scared until the opening title was on. Thankfully, it was like usual. The episode was called Because, and I thought it had to do with the Abbey Road song Because. Then the cartoon played, and something was wrong. It was totally different than the original style. It looked similar to the original, but it seemed darker. Then the episode showed all 4 Beatles in their original design, John, Paul, George, and Ringo. They had voice actors that sounded like Paul Frees and Lance Percival, who were the actors on the show, so good to know. They were talking about some kind of a CD they found outside the recording studio, and were talking about listening to it. Right off the bat, that was pretty damn strange, given the CDs weren't invented until like 1976, and the show was produced in the late 60s. So then the scene showed John putting the headphones on until it happened. John all of a sudden just looked like he just blacked out. Then Paul said, "John, are you alright?" Then the screen zoomed up to John, who had started drooling, and all of a sudden, John's eyes turned into an LSD acid trip image with weird colors. After 10 seconds of John's acid tripping face, something appeared. I grabbed the clicker and went backwards to see what it was. What I saw was a morbid, grotesque picture. It was a picture of a man with a ventriloquist dummy. The scary part of the picture was that the man with the dummy had no mouth. Instead, there was blood on his face where his mouth was supposed to be. The dummy had fire in his eyes and an insane smile. I had to choke right then and there. I felt like I was going to vomit. Then the screen went back to John's face. "Are you alright?" asked Ringo. "Seeing is not believing. Seeing is killing." John soon got back to consciousness and said, Yes, I am. What time is it, George?" "It's 1:13, said George. Then the screen went black and blood started to rain down from the sky. But this blood was, like the blood you see when you cut open your skin. It was blood. It was like if I touched the screen, my fingers would get all red, and the blood rain soon disappeared and soon showed the Beatles walking to a lake. A crowd of girls soon started chasing the guys for 30 seconds, like normal, when all of a sudden a picture of a girl with no eyes, just her eye sockets, dripping with blood that looked like the rain blood. She had no teeth, and more blood was just pouring out of her mouth. It's like they just wanted you to know blood, blood, blood everywhere. I jumped back on the couch after seeing it. Then the screen went to John's face, and all of a sudden the screaming of the fans stopped. And when all 4 of them turned around to check, all of the fans were on the ground, burning to a crisp. Paul, clearly petrified, asked, "What? What happened?" Then the screen showed Ringo vomiting out red vomit with chunks of brown meat. Something caught my eye. I paused and looked closely at Ringo's puke, and there was a face of Hitler. I was shocked that a man who killed millions of people and soldiers was in a cartoon about the Beatles. "Just forget that," said John. "But what about our fans?" "I don't give a fuck. You know what I did with my first wife?" I was shocked that this episode involved John saying the F word and saying anything about Cynthia, his first wife. I decided to continue on. The next scene showed a building that was about to be demolished. The Beatles were walking down a hallway when the wrecking ball hit the building. A piece of rubble went flying in the air. It was about to miss a person when John did the unthinkable. He pushed the man back to where the piece of rubble was about to fall. In a second, the piece of solid marble crushed the guy to his death. Blood, brain matter, guts, gore, it was everywhere. And it didn't look like a 60s cartoon either. A crowd of people surrounded the scene where the camera zooms up to John with an evil smirk on his face. The next scene only showed just the black screen. The only thing I heard was a gunshot. Then there was smoke that seemed to represent the fired gun, and the screen showed the recording studio where the Beatles were recently recording their music. There were no lights on, but I did hear mumbling, and I listened closely to hear someone saying, "I shouldn't have done that. They're going to know soon." Then one light went on. There was a shadow outside the door. It was the form of John. It wasn't long until the light was reflecting to the sound manager in the recording booth. Dead. I quickly figured out he was shot by a shotgun. The camera zoomed up to the ground outside the room, and in a quick shock, a model M1887 fell to the ground with just covered in redness and bits of smoke still coming out of the barrel. The next scene showed Paul, George, and Ringo knocking on John's room door. And then Ringo, for some reason, busted down the door, and there was a humongous safe that was the size of an SUV. They didn't know what the combination was, but for some reason it wasn't locked up all the way. They opened it up, and they found out John's secret. The church of the time was right. He was a Satanist. There was a dead body of a woman on a pentagram with blood in her eyes gorged out. There were dead animals, a fan-made, I don't know what, there's some sort of devil symbol and a goat skull on a pentagram. In fear, George started spasming and he fell to the ground. Paul had to choke back his vomit as his face turned green, and Ringo, he just started crying really loudly. It didn't sound like real, normal cartoon crying. It sounded as real as the day. And in a shock, I found out that the dead woman was Ringo's fiancée, Jenny. I didn't know that Ringo had a fiancée, but I was scared that Ringo's crying started to get mixed with screams of a girl. I started to suspect that maybe that was Jenny's screams. The screen went black. Then the screen showed the view of the sun setting from John's legs. Here Comes the Sun played. Then the screen immediately went to John's face that had a mad expression and a rapid-moving mouth. He had red in his iris. He had a noose around his neck. He was about to commit suicide. He shut his eyes and he jumped. The camera showed John's feet still swinging. The camera zoomed out to show his lifeless body hanging on the small cliff on the lake that the Beatles were going to be in the beginning of the episode. The screen went black, and Paul appeared to have a very sad expression. The screen went black again, and the scary part began. Without warning, Paul's face appeared, and it zoomed in very fast, and his eyes bulged, bloodshot, and very much real. There were so many camera views of Paul's face, like a zoom out, going in and out, and then pictures appeared. I remember seeing a picture of a hand with a gun in it, and the gun was pointed to a little boy's head, but the gun was already fired. Another was a river with a garfish in it, and right behind the lady, there's a lady, but there's a body of a couple, the bloody mess. The next picture was a burnt town, people were on the ground dead. Quickly I discovered that the town was destroyed during an attack. It was destroyed because of the Vietnam War. The next picture was 3 undertakers with 7 coffins with little children, couldn't be younger than 6. And behind the left undertaker was a coffin with a hand coming out of it, and the hand was moving. After some pictures, it shows Paul with the same expression that he made before the scary slideshow. Then a voice appeared of a low, low, quiet voice saying, "Do it." Then an M1 911 Colt pistol appeared in Paul's hand. He puts it in his mouth, he pulls the trigger, blood, blaring matter, gore, you know the deal. It was everywhere. The camera zoomed up to the capsule of the bullet that shot Paul, and the capsule said, "Your life was already over, Paul." The next scene was George on a cliff from the same lake John committed suicide. He was about to commit suicide too. I thought he was going to jump off the cliff, but instead he pulled out a gun and he shot himself. Happiness is a warm gun played. At the end of the scene, the camera zoomed to the gun, and the gun was the same gun Paul used to commit suicide. And the gun said, "It takes 2 bullets to kill 2 Beatles." Oh, that scared me, all right. Scared me more than I care to admit. The next scene showed Ringo in the hospital dying of who knows what. He took the picture of him and his fiancée and the engagement ring he gave her, and then he died. At the end of the episode, it appeared to be a dark hall. All I heard were screams, whistles, yelling, gunshots. I soon found out that the hall was in a prison. The scary part was that every time the lamp swung in the hall, a black hooded figure appeared. It wasn't long until I found out it was John with gray skin and a red iris. He said, "I hope you enjoyed your life, because my life is over, including my friends, all because of me, John." And right behind him was a crowd of guards and prisoners. It seemed that some of them had bullet holes in their heads and just gore and screwed up burnt tissue just all over their bodies. And the weird part, if you, oh boy, the weirdest part was that the prisoner that was right next to John was none other than Mark David Chapman, the man who killed John Lennon in real life. For 30 seconds, evil John and the crowd of prisoners and guards started walking straight like if they were walking toward me. The more they kept walking, the more blood they got on themselves. John started to turn into a snake in a weird way. His eyes turned reptilian, his skin turned scaly, his tongue was in the form of a snake's tongue. And then the episode ended. I went backwards. I kept rewinding the opening credits to believe how stupid I was to believe this was some nice episode. I didn't trust the man at the store. It wasn't long until something caught my eye. I looked closely at the bottom of the word "because," and I paused to see that the episode was actually called The Beatles Cartoon, Because of John, They're Dead. I was about to take the tape out of the VCR, and the thing just caught on fire. I immediately got my mom, I got a fire extinguisher, we put out the fire. We discovered the VCR was somehow still okay. We put in more VCR tapes and the thing worked. The only thing that was destroyed was the original tape. It was the tape that started the fire, right? So we went back to the collector's shop. We brought back the tape. The counter worker for the Beatles section, he said, "What happened to the tape?" I let him know it was set on fire when the tape ended. He took what was left of it and he just threw it away. "Should have burnt to a crisp," he said. The next day I was in the car with my mom to take something back that my dad forgot to take to work when we saw police surrounding a house and 6 men were being retrieved out of the house. My mom was told by an officer that 6 men were arrested for drug possession and grave robbing. It wasn't long until stuff came out of the house, and that stuff was like the things people use for recordings for cartoons. They even found drawings of what they say is a morbid cartoon involving the Beatles. The police were informed that they sold the tape to a collector's shop, and I told the police I got the tape, and they showed me the drawings to see if I was right. Oh, I got all of them right. And after telling about the tape, they were nice enough to give me $200, and I was glad that I got money, because that sight of seeing the tape scared me half to death. I felt like I deserved something. For 4 days, I had nightmares, same one again and again, and when they stopped, the tape appeared on my front porch. It said, "You shouldn't have watched that." But I threw it away in the trash, and I never saw that thing again. But I just wonder why someone sent me a tape that said that. All I can say to that tape is, I don't know why it said hello. I say goodbye.